When I first got to Drouin, as John knows, I arrived with nothing. I had very little clothing, no bed, no bedding, no kitchen table. I remember one late night sneaking behind Coles and borrowing 2 milk crates so I had somewhere to sit. And I was struggling. I didn't know or understand why I was struggling, but I was struggling terribly. And John came along, and the team from Vinnie's began supporting me, and it was just a godsend to me, really was. And I didn't realise that I was a very unwell person at that time. I didn't realise that I had quite a difficult mental illness to deal with. And I didn't understand why I drank the way I did, which over the years got quite heavy. And I also had some other drug issues as well. And I didn't understand that I was self-medicating. And I went along to a therapist and finally got diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder, along with things like depression and anxiety and panic and post-traumatic stress disorder. And that was a very big shock to me, a huge shock to me, as a matter of fact, and my world began to crumble. And the only stable thing was John and Kathy and the team dropping in to see me. And I couldn't manage anything. I couldn't manage a shower, I couldn't manage to brush my hair. I don't think I always strung a sentence together very well, but they kept coming back. They kept coming back even in my worst states, and they were happy to see me. Not just happy to see me, but they treated me like a human being. Excuse me, I always get emotional. And I didn't really feel like one anymore. Thank you, John. And that gave me a little bit of hope, and I felt cared for, that someone in this world actually cared, whether I survive or not. And over the next few years, I underwent some pretty heavy-duty trauma therapy. And that was extremely difficult. There were times when I couldn't go to the grocers. There were times when I couldn't shop. And there were times when my budgeting skills were so lost that I couldn't work out what happened to my money from my pension. And of course, I wouldn't have a skerrick of food in the house before I rang John, and who insisted that I ring him anyway, even if I thought I might be able to get through, which was what I usually did. And often I laughed when you said usually on a Friday, because I was worried that I wouldn't make it through the weekend. And over these years, I did go quite low in weight. I think it was 32 kilos. And I remember my first attempt at giving up drinking when I dropped so low in weight. And John and Kathy were coming, and I always got a hug. I always got a smile, and I always got encouragement to just keep going. And there weren't too many other callers by this stage, I must say. The house was a real disaster zone, and like nothing I've ever experienced before. And I was in quite a state. At one point, there was a couple of years there where I could not get off the couch. And I found myself sleeping in my clothing on the couch. I found myself not being able to feed myself or even get up to cook. It was really a struggle to really do anything. And then someone gave me a little dog. And I thought, I don't need this right now. The poor dog. But someone was going to shoot the dog, and I didn't have the heart to say no. Well, the dog's not a little dog. The dog's this big now. So that was an added burden, but a blessing in disguise, because that dog needed to go outside and that dog needed to be fed, and I needed to check his water. And so that forced me off the couch, and I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't have got up at all if it wasn't for the dog and John knocking on the door. So my therapy continued for quite a while, and I started to understand a few things. John and Kathy reminded me the whole time that there were good people in the world. And I started to understand a little bit about why I was unwell and about why I was drinking. And having good examples that called in, again, was another blessing. Because I thought after the door had closed again, I thought, what nice people. They don't need to drink. They're always happy and they're doing good things for other people. And they care about me. They care what happens. And nobody else did. So as I began to recover, John and Kathy just kept coming back and coming back. And there were days when it really surprised me that they would walk in the door. It was that bad. And but they never looked down on me. They never ever judged me. They just supported me and they just cared. Before I knew John and Kathy, I felt humiliated. I felt mortified that anyone would see me in that state, and I felt that they certainly wouldn't want to come back a second time. And I was so relieved to meet John and Kathy and the team, so very, very relieved, because there was no judgment on me. And they are such warm-hearted people that I knew that I was safe in their hands, that my privacy was respected, and that my condition and my state of being was not being disrespected. They cared for me as one human being to another. So it was very difficult for me to allow anyone in to see that, but it had to be the right people. So St. Vinny's were literally a godsend, because they really cared about what happened to me, and there was no judgment on me. They would have come in and behaved the same way if I lived in a mansion that was immaculate and all the rest of it. They would have been exactly the same as they came into my home. So while it was difficult for me, they very soon put me at my ease, and that made a lot of difference to me. Not just about letting someone in, but about having hope for the future.